One of the biggest trends over the last year has been home purchase failures. Simply put, there's no money when it comes time to close. So, when you look at it from a resale perspective and a pre construction perspective, it's typically happening in the pre construction side. The resale side is a much shorter sales cycle. So, you go look for a home, you get a pre approval, you pretty much have done all the documentation. It's closing in 60 days. You've put your deposit in. You know you have money set aside for your down payment when it comes time to closing, plus whatever other money that you are putting in, whether it's the sale of a home that you have or money that you've saved up, investments, whatever. So typically the appraisal is done within that time frame. Nothing's really changing monumentally in that time in terms of value where you won't be able to close come closing time. Typically where this happens is if you lose a job, your spouse loses a job, you didn't sell your house on time, or you didn't sell it for how much you thought you were going to sell it. That's when that can happen on the resale side. And believe me, it has happened where you can't sell your house for what you thought you were going to sell. Times have changed, and there's a lot of people that are still kind of disillusioned on what they believe their house value is, even with a professional telling you that it's not. And don't get me wrong, sometimes it's the professional that's steering you wrong, which can cause a huge headache because you've already purchased the home, you've already put your down payment in, you're locked in a contract. That guy has now bought a home, he's locked in a contract. It can get quite messy with litigation. So that's how that can happen on the resale side. So basically, everything's good up until closing. Bank finds out you lost your job and they're no longer going to move forward with the funds. So now that whole process has to begin where, people are keeping each other's deposits, and the sellers start suing for damages, or they can't sell their house for as much as they thought they could sell it for in the future. They're locked in a contract. That guy's suing him. It just causes this huge chain reaction. So that's the less typical side. Right now, what a lot of lawyers are talking about, and what they say has grown over 500% in the last year, is the pre-construction. So you buy a condo for 1,000 a square foot or 1,200 a square foot back in 2021 when it was crazy, and now it's ready to move in. So builder says, okay, let's go. You're ready. Let's do this. Appraiser walks in and says, well, across the street, there's a unit that's very similar to this that's selling for 900 a square foot. Now there's a shortfall of $400,000. So either you have to come up with that as the purchaser to close the deal, knowing that the unit is nowhere near that in terms of value. You bought this 3 years ago with the intention of renting it out at a rent rate of X, and now you know you can only get this. But not to mention it, you don't have this extra 400,000, or even if you do, you beg, borrow, and steal. In terms of getting it rented, it's almost another challenge that you have to worry about. And now you're losing money on top of losing money. So a lot of people are walking away from the deals, losing their deposits. Builders are trying to work with individuals to get these deals closed. However, it's a huge challenge. They can only do so much in terms of how they can get the keys in your hand. They can't give you a $400,000 discount. You got to remember their cost to build these things went up as well in these crazy times of the pandemic pricing. So these are the typical. Obviously, the most common is the pre-construction. Now we're going to have a huge problem. We have 20,000 units coming up in the next 18 months that need to close, and these were sold in pandemic pricing, like these downtown Toronto units. You're talking $1,200-$1,300 a square foot, and now I can safely say they're in the 750 to 800,000. 750 to $800 a square foot. That's a significant shortfall. Now, who's to blame? Everyone, including sales reps, buyers, investors, builders, cities, everyone got greedy during COVID when we saw what happened, or I should say, the pandemic. Um, we all kind of thought that that's how things were going to be, and that's how business was going to be done. Prices, there's no way they could drop this far. Well, they did, and here we're at. It's going to be quite the show over the next 18 months, and I'd love to get your perspective on that. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I think we're in for quite the spectacle, and hopefully we can get out of this, collectively unscathed. But right now, it's not looking too good.